from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, just in time for Thanksgiving dinner, we put the finishing touches on the sweet potato harvest.
We still dealt with dry, dusty conditions.
How one major grocery chain is putting the farm right in the store, as concern grows regarding a possible Phase 1 trade deal between the U.S. and China.
The question is, do I want to make a deal?
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado and the all-new Silverado HD, the strongest, most advanced family of Silverados ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Stocks tumbling on Wednesday on Reuters reporting the so-called Phase 1 deal between the U.S. and China may not be done by the end of the year. But President Trump continuing to say the two sides are still talking. Now, Bloomberg reporting negotiators are exploring tariff relief by using preliminary terms that were set in the trade deal that failed back in May. Bloomberg says the White House is still debating the precise percentage of any possible tariff rollbacks. Now, earlier this week, President Trump threatened higher tariffs if the two sides don't make a deal.
The economy is doing unbelievably well. We continue to talk to China. China wants to make a deal. The question is, do I want to make a deal? Because I like what's happening right now. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars.
The Trump administration is due to impose 15% tariffs on smartphones, toys, and other products from China on December 15th. Despite all the pressures facing farmers between trade issues and weather, experts say so far the farm credit system remains strong. Now, we learned more about the state of farm financials this week at a House Ag Subcommittee hearing. An official with Farm Credit Administration telling lawmakers current challenges include lower crop prices and reduced demand, and land and input prices that haven't come down accordingly. Now, there are also challenges due to tight labor markets and limited access to capital and credit. Now, he says China trade aid payments will mean net cash farm income will likely be close to average, but he warns farm debt is rising along with repayment issues.
So I have serious concerns about the debt that we're seeing. Farm debt is projected to hit $416 billion this year. Unfortunately, the $19 billion of farm debt that Iowans have is the highest in the nation. And this level of debt absolutely has consequences. The Farm Bureau reports that farm bankruptcies rose 24% compared to a year ago. And a recent study from Iowa State University classifies 44% of Iowa farms as financially vulnerable.
That I think we're at a level that's comparable to the early 80s. Decreasing farm incomes, decreasing margins, eroding current ratios. And at that time in the Midwest, we'd lost 15 to 20% of our land values. Guess what? Today we've lost 15 to 20% of our land values in the Midwest.
New developments in a story we first brought you online. Two young boys killed in a farming accident in northern Indiana. Now, it happened in Napanee. Two Amish brothers, ages 3 and 5, were hit by a truck. A coroner saying the boys lived on a farm next to a field where trucks and combines were running. They were playing outside while their mother was attending to another child in the house. He says the boys became intrigued with the equipment and crossed a fence to check them out. The driver of a tractor had just finished loading a semi-trailer with 90,000 pounds of corn before starting to drive away.
Had for some reason or another gotten underneath this semi-grain trailer. It was attached to a semi-tractor, and apparently they may have been playing or hiding. We're not sure exactly what happened yet. The driver went to move the truck forward and did not see the children and pulled the truck forward about 15 feet. And then looked in his mirror and noticed the children laying back there.
The coroner says he believes the children died instantly. Authorities say the driver was shook up about what happened. More producers are getting a break in the weather in order to finally wrap up harvest, as meteorologist Cindy Clausen shows us today's crop comments.
Well, Clinton, we've talked a lot about the battles many producers have waged against the weather this year. One of those areas hard hit, Illinois, where the harvest is still going on. But there's good news for at least one of them in central Illinois. Will Hornback sharing this video of him finally finishing harvest. You can almost hear the sigh of relief. 80% of corn is harvested right now in Illinois. And I know in my driving around Indiana, I've seen producers harvesting corn this week as well. Well, let's take a look at the wind speed forecast for the day. And we are going to be seeing some breezier conditions, especially up by the Great Lakes, but then also stretching down into parts of the southern plains as we see a cold front that's going to be stretched all the way from the Great Lakes to those southern plains. Fairly quiet in the far southeast and in the west as we head through the day today. Now, as we head into our Friday forecast, everything shifts off to the east to look for the windiest conditions in the northeastern United States. Stay tuned. I'll have your national forecast coming right up.
An update on a reported legal shipment of industrial hemp seized by the New York Police Department. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office say they plan on dropping all charges in the case. You see here more than 100 pounds of plants that officers thought were marijuana. They had come from Foxholler Farms in Wilson, Vermont. Now, a lawyer for the farm says certificates with the plants showed the hemp fell well below the legal limit for THC, but the NYPD seized the hemp anyway and arrested a shop owner who came to collect the shipment. A new hemp processing plant is now open for business in central Indiana. Take a look. Kentucky-based Third Wave Farms opened this plant last month in Kokomo. It's inside a 22,000 square foot building. It's equipped with machines that can dry and process over 75,000 pounds of hemp a day. It can turn it into a stable, storable, market-ready product that's used in dozens of products like CBD oil. And if you're interested in learning more about hemp production, join us for a Farm Journal Hemp College. There are 3 coming up soon. First in Indianapolis, December 16th. It then moves to Chicago, January 27th. And on February 12th, Hemp College will be in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can go to agweb.com/events for details. Researchers think they now know what causes a deadly wheat pathogen that threatens the vital global food source. They've uncovered the origin of a stem rust fungus called UG99. The discovery made by researchers at the University of Free State in South Africa. The rust disease was first detected in Uganda back in 1998, and it is spread throughout Africa and the Middle East, devastating wheat crops. Now, researchers determined the pathogen can be traced to something that rarely happens when 2 different rust strains fuse together and exchange intact nuclei. The team says now that they know more about the enemy, they are better equipped to fight against it. African swine fever is continuing to hit China hard. So when could the American market see demand increases? We have more in today's analysis, and how Kroger is bringing farming right into the grocery store. Next. How does this sound? Produce picked so fresh you can see the roots. That's the idea of a new partnership between Kroger and Infarm. Kroger says it will be putting modular living produce farms in 2 stores in Washington state. Now, the farms will use hydroponic technology and the produce will grow right on site inside the stores. Kroger saying in a release the farms are designed to scale and will provide shoppers with the freshest and most sustainable living produce options available. The concern over China spread to the commodity markets on Wednesday. Here's an update from the CME.
Today in the grain market, soybeans were firm. That's consolidating, really at the recent lows that we've had. Sideways trade is kind of creating a little bit of a channel right now. The futures have lost that downside momentum, and that's why it's moving sideways. Interestingly enough, we've had that U.S. Senate bill supporting Hong Kong definitely has made an obstacle for the USChina trade negotiations, and it makes it very difficult. Corn is easier today. That ethanol demand has just declined even further. There just isn't any kind of good news. That's really pressuring the market somewhat. We're down almost 4 cents today. Today in livestock, cattle was a little bit easier. That boxed beef prices are a little bit weak, but in spite of that, the market has not dropped, showing its tremendous strength, possibly because of that Senate legislation that was passed to support Hong Kong. That just tells us there isn't going to be any kind of resolution with the U.S.-China tariff war anytime soon. That is positive for the beef side because I think that a lot of the markets have moved to beef over pork just because of the skyrocketing prices in China and the production that we have here in the U.S.
Jeff French, Top Third Ag Marketing, our guest. And Jeff, let's talk about what's happening in this African swine fever situation over in China, because we've been watching, trying to see if there's any indication that they're going to get their arms around this, being the world's largest hog herd.
Yeah, and we had thought that it was under control until this week that they announced that it was found again in the northern regions. In the northern region of China, that's where the ASF was first found back in August 2018. This is where it all started at. So, they've had a tremendous loss of hogs over there. There's going to be a run of pork everywhere throughout the world, and what they're going through is definitely bullish on all proteins here throughout the world.
Yeah, we start to try to get a handle on how many hogs they've lost, what percentage of the herd, and that number has a pretty wide range.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're going to say what they want to say, but at the end of the day, they want to keep prices as cheap as they can. What we do know is they're hurting, and they will have to come to the world market to resupply those reserves.
Yeah, well, as we watch these hog markets here at home, we continue to wait for that China ASF bounce, so to speak. Do we still expect that? Are we anticipating it?
Well, if you look at the summer months, they are starting to, you have them up above 90 cents.
Sure.
What I do caution everybody is if it is found here in our country, it could be devastating. I mean, thankfully it hasn't been, and hopefully it continues to be that way. But there are some things that you can do to protect yourself against that, because it would be devastating for prices here in the States.
Yeah. So let's just say it doesn't end up here in the States and we continue to see this pull and demand of our product. Where does that take us into 2020?
Well, I mean, with China, we don't know. I mean, they could buy every hog that we have for export and probably then some. So, I mean, we've been to the 120, 130 areas. That's definitely not out of the question. Though we do have plenty of supply right now. I mean, fourth quarter 2019, we're dealing right now in this industry the biggest amount that we've had to deal with as well. So we have plenty of pork to sell them.
Okay, well, it is a dynamic situation, something we're keeping an eye on. Appreciate it, Jeff. Yeah. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up in just a minute.
For a special report on the grain markets, call toll-free at 877-TT-HEDGE. That's 877-884-3343. Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Meteorologist Cindy Clausen taking a look at our root zone moisture map, and Cindy, it's either really dry or getting very wet still.
Oh, exactly. But the big thing that we've noticed over the past couple of weeks is a lot of areas getting drier. While things haven't changed a whole lot in the north central part of the country from the Great Lakes over into parts of the northern high plains, it really has gotten a lot drier on our root zone, especially in the Four Corners region and into the southwest. We've also dried out quite a bit in parts of the mid-Atlantic and heading up into the northeast as well. And it's dried out a lot here, although you're not seeing the yellows and the reds here, but there was a lot more blue on this a few weeks ago. So the theme has been people drying out. All right, let's take a look and see it at the wet weather we are expecting in some of those places today. We've got a low pressure system that's right here in parts of the upper Midwest. That's going to scooch off to the east, bringing some rain and even some snow with the secondary front there in parts of the upper Great Lakes area. Secondary low over towards the Four Corners region. That's going to be bringing some rain and some snow as well. So as we put this into motion, head through the day, that low pressure system moves up into more so the eastern Great Lakes. You got the trailing cold front down into the southern plains, and there's that secondary low down in the Four Corners region. So look for rain and a little bit of snow in spots with both of those lows. High pressure in the southeast, keeping things for the most part dry there and fairly tranquil in much of the west as well. Now as we head into tonight, we're going to be seeing that rain picking up as that low pressure system starts to pull more Gulf moisture inside. Snow for parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, northern Texas, and into Colorado. We've got that snow up into the eastern parts of the lakes as that system moves to the east as we head through our Friday forecast. And then we've got that moisture now moving into the southeast for Friday with high pressure settling behind it, starting to dry things out as we start off the weekend in parts of the Corn Belt. All right, let's take a look at the precipitation This has been the past 24 hours. Just going to focus with that original low in the Four Corners region, and you've got the low that's into the Great Lakes. Everything pushes east, and you can see where that secondary low moves to parts of the south central United States, and that's where the heaviest rain is expected to be. Now, snowfall-wise, yeah, we've had a fair amount of that, especially from Minnesota down through the Four Corners region. Adding the next 24 hours, we'll see more of that in parts of the Rockies and then heading into parts of the Central Plains. Temperature-wise, yeah, we're starting to cool down a little bit. Highs in the 30s for some of the northern plains and into the Intermountain West, but still a big difference though. We've got 70s and maybe even some 80s down towards Texas on the south side of that front. Cooling down into the teens and 20s in parts of the north central United States. Still some 40s, 50s, even some 60s down to the south. And then tomorrow we're going to see those temperatures on the cool side, on the back side of that frontal boundary in the central United States. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Fort Benton, Montana, sunny and warmer for you today with a high of 40 degrees. Goodwell, Oklahoma, rain changing to snow with a high of 44. And St. Louis, Michigan, warmer with some rain and a high of 49.
The cattle market's been performing well recently. Is it a sign of things to come? What the experts at Drovers have to say next. A 3-week rally has cash-fed cattle prices trading about 16% higher than the lows set in September. Drovers reporting market analysts are bullish for the balance of 2019 and into early 2020. Market fundamentals suggest tightening cattle numbers over the next few weeks, along with strong consumer demand that will support prices. Now, the market is also anticipating the reopening of that Tyson plant that was forced to close due to a fire. The plant is expected to reopen the first week of December.
Demand has been excellent, and part of that has been due to global protein shortage due to African swine fever. Longer-term analysts believe a bearish supply scenario is developing for the spring quarter of next year. Poor wheat grazing prospects on the high plains this fall has driven more cattle into feed yards, placed against the second quarter 2020 markets rather than the third quarter 2020 markets.
Cash cattle markets appear strong again this week, with prices on Wednesday's Fed Cattle Exchange $1 higher than last week. Now, some of the strength coming not just from domestic demand, but global trade issues, including the continued drought in Australia.
Beef production in Australia for coming years down 15%. You know, our U.S. shipments of New Zealand product is down about 30% for this year, and will be down more as the New Zealand product and Australian product goes to China. That shortens up our imported manufacturing beef supplies. The patty makers have to go to fed beef chucks and rounds to get their grinding materials. That's the driver in fed cutout. So it all links.
Close says between drought and ASF, this global demand pull is likely to continue for another 3 to 5 years at a minimum, adding it could take up to 10 years to fully rebuild. They're a staple at the Thanksgiving table, but will there be enough to go around? We head to sweet potato harvest in Louisiana next.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Sweet potatoes are a staple of holiday meals, and growers in Louisiana are making sure there is a good supply for everyone, despite challenging growing and harvest conditions. LSU Ag Center correspondent Craig Gautreaux reports farmers are producing a decent crop.
Sweet potato farmers are putting the finishing touches on this year's harvest. The harvest season started out very dry, which can cause the mechanical harvesters to damage the skins of the potatoes.
Growers were having to water fields so they could actually dig fields. I mean, it was extremely dry. They were still dealt with dry, dusty conditions.
Now at the end of the season, the pendulum has swung as growers are dealing with wet fields, presenting a different set of issues.
It makes the fields boggy. It's hard to separate the potatoes from the mud and all that. Plus, it's harder on the equipment as well.
There are two markets for Louisiana sweet potatoes. The fresh market is geared toward consumers and is a key ingredient in holiday dishes. The other market is for processing, where many of the potatoes are turned into sweet potato fries.
The processing plant wants the potatoes a little larger, so they have less loss when when they slice and dice and peel the potatoes. So they want larger potatoes.
Yields are typical for the state of Louisiana, with growers averaging around 450 bushels per acre.
Probably going to be looking at the 4 to 450, I think, because we've had some fields that yielded way up in the 700 and 800s, but we've had some that's yielded down in the 3s. So hopefully we'll stay around the state's average this year.
Sistrunk said acreage for sweet potatoes remained virtually the same as last year, which was encouraging after seeing the 2018 crop reduced by 20%. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
Thanks, Craig. This year, Louisiana has approximately 7,800 acres of potatoes. In 2000, Louisiana had more than 27,000 acres. That's all the time we have this morning. I'm sure glad you tuned in. It's been part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great one.